Tying up one of my favorite wet flies to tie today. This is a trout fin. There's lots of different variations of a trout fin fly. This one happens to come from Don Bastian's DVD on tying wet flies. There'll be a link down in the description. As I said, there's lots of different variations to this. This one's very simple. The body is an orange floss. The ribbing, as well as the tag, is a white floss. And then you've got the wing, which is orange, black, and white. And it's basically to represent the fins of a brook trout. Brook trout are very territorial, apparently attack each other a lot, and so I guess old timers would cut the actual fins off and put them on a hook, and that's how they could catch other brook trout. So that's how the fly came into being. Like I said, there's a number of different versions of it. This one is off of that DVD, and I just really liked it the first time I ever saw it. I've tied up a number of these and caught panfish with them. This summer I'm going to be heading up to Michigan and actually swinging some of these for hopefully some brook trout. Maybe a brown here and there. So that's the trout fin, and I'll go ahead and get started. Hook in the vise, this is a Mustad 3399. I'll go ahead and start the trout fin. I'm going to debarb the hook. And I'll attach my thread. Because I'm using a orange Danville floss for the body primarily, I'm going to start with a white thread. This is a Danville 6/0 in white. And that's just to lay down a nice bright foundation so that the colors don't darken up when it's in the water. Run my thread down to just about the point of the hook. Here I'm going to tie in my tip. The tip on this is white floss. I'm using a Danville 4-strand in white. Now because of the size of this hook, I'm going to actually tie in 3 strands here. Now 2 of the strands are going to actually wrap around and be the tip or the tag. The third one is a security measure. If I were tying this on, say, a size 8 or 10 hook, I probably would just have 1 strand for the tag. But because it's a little bit bigger hook, I'm going to go ahead and use 2. I'm going to tie that in, and I'm going to wrap that. I want to try and keep that right on top of the hook shank. I'm going to wrap that down about a half dozen wraps to secure that, and then bring my thread back up to just over the barb of the hook. Turning the vise over, I'll go ahead and wrap in the tip, keeping this one out to the end is going to be my security. Generally 4 wraps is all I need. I'll secure that in, a couple of wraps. Now, if I don't have this security piece here, the problem is that as you're fishing this fly, this floss here is going to start to not really unravel, it's just going to move. It's going to spread out down around the bend of the hook. So this tag here, or I should say this piece right here in our tip, is going to allow me to secure that so that that stays in place and it doesn't spread out. I'll fold that right over the top. That's part of the reason why I wanted to make certain that I had, when I tied that in, I had it right over the back of the hook here, not off to the side here or underneath, because when I fold that over, I just want it to be nice and smooth right across the top. Trim this the length of the body. Now I'm going to tie in my rib. For the rib, it's also the same 4-strand white floss. I'm going to use 2 pieces of the white floss. And the reason, again, is because it's a larger size hook. The size 6 hook is a little bit, not big, but it's just, if I just use 1 strand of floss, it ends up being too narrow and a little bit transparent. So I'm going to use 2 so that it's just a little bit brighter. Body is I'm using a Danville 4-strand in orange. Once I secure that in, I'm going to wrap forward in nice touching turns. This is going to keep a nice smooth underbody. Stop with my thread just about an eye length behind the eye of the hook. Now I'll go ahead and apply the orange floss for the body. Screw that in once you get up to your thread. Trim away the excess. Now for the rib, I could go ahead and wrap this in just the way it is, but as you can see, it tends to spread out and it tends to lay flat, which is not the effect that I'm looking for. What I want is to have this twisted up so it's more of a cord. There's a little bit more orange space between them. So I'm going to stroke this out to get all the fibers under the same tension. And then I'm going to start putting in a clockwise twist. And when I say clockwise, that's from my viewpoint as I am looking down onto the fly. Clockwise is going to be this way. Now, as you're looking at this, clockwise is going to be counterclockwise. And I'm also wetting my fingers just a little bit just to give me a little bit of traction. Careful as you are twisting this. If you're twisting and pulling on this too much, you can actually tear it from right underneath the orange. Start wrapping that around. And then you'll just get 5 nice evenly spaced wraps. As I come around each time right here, I'm twisting it a little bit more just to keep that tight cord look to it. Then I'll secure that in right in the head space. Done with the white thread, so I'm going to change over to a Danville 6/0 in black. I like the Danville thread. I've used uni thread and I like that too, but the one nice thing with the Danville is it's got a little bit of stretch to it. Sometimes in tying these flies, it's kind of nice because you can get just 2 or 3 wraps of thread with a little stretch around it that will hold material in very, very well. So I'm going to wrap that back to the end of the head space, and now I'm going to tie in my throat. The throat on this is going to be just some orange Schlappen. And I'm going to prep my feather by taking all the fluff off of it. And I'm going to take a segment here like this and get the tips even, peel that off, another one on the other side, and that will, when I put those together, will make up the fibers that I need for my throat. I'll measure those. I like those to go almost the full length inside the gap of the hook. Loop from underneath, tie that in. Trim away the excess. Make certain that those are still on the underside. They haven't scooched around as you've tied that in or anything, or cut those. Then I'm going to smooth off the head space, get my thread right back at the very end of the head space for the wing. Now the trout fin, the wing is made of 3 different types of mallard flight feathers. Predominantly it's an orange. There is 2 barbs of black, and on top of that there's 4 barbs of white. So once you have clipped those out, and you actually have to make each slip here like this, you may have to do a little pruning on these. I think I have 1 extra barb on in the white there, so I'll peel that out. And then I think on my other side I'll also have 1 extra one. But you're better off to go ahead and cut a little bit more, because you can prune those out. You want to make certain you have 2 of the black, 4 of the white, and then if you're orange, when you create each slip is a little bit long, or I should say a little bit wide, that's fine, because when you put them together to actually tie in the wing like this, if when you have these together and you have the whites all evened up right there, if the orange is a little long, you can, a little wide I should say, you can just peel those out to get the right width for the overall wing. With the tips matched up on that, you want to go ahead and put that up onto the hook and measure it. I like the tips to go just a little bit past the bend of the hook. Secure those in place with your fingers, and then we'll do a pinch wrap to secure that down to the hook. A couple wraps to secure that around, and then we can take a look at our wing. Be careful, the biggest trick here in working with these is that you don't mess with them in your hands too much. If you go back and forth and mess with them in your hands, you're going to tear up the barbules and the barbs on these, and then they're not going to be good. Now, as you can see on this side, somehow the white slipped back. I could unwrap that and try and put that in, but the white has kind of been crimped right here, and I don't know that that's going to work that well. So I'm just going to leave that as a fishing fly. This is going to be fine. Don't know that I'd want to frame this. I'd probably just make a whole new slip for that, but that happens sometimes. Like I said, as you're tying things in, sometimes they just shift. So I will trim away the excess. Supporting that wing just a little bit, I'm going to wrap back to the back end of the head here just to get that anchor down, and then forward to create the head of the fly and shape it. I'm going to spin my bobbin counterclockwise to flatten out the thread here. And then I'm going to just run the hook on my bodkin back towards me under that thread to help flatten that out. This just kind of helps in finishing off the fly. It fills in those little gaps in the twisted thread, and it smooths off the head preliminarily as you're applying head cement and lacquer. 7 or 8 turns there to complete the whip finish. Cut my thread away. A little head cement on both sides here. And with a little couple coats of black lacquer on that in a little bit, our trout fin is done. It's a very interesting fly to tie. There are at least about 10 to a dozen different types of trout fin patterns that I've seen out there. It's a very popular pattern. This happens to be, as I mentioned, just the one from Don Bastian's DVD. I just really liked this when I first saw it. Tying some up, as I'm going to be fishing up in Michigan this summer a couple of times. I just want to see if I can't catch a few brook trout with it. And I'm pretty certain it'll catch a bluegill. So that's the trout fin. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help Dressed Irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.